What a weekend in college football that we had once again. Alabama gets their revenge on Vanderbilt after that embarrassing defeat in Nashville last year. Billy Napier turns into prime Nick Saban. His job is on the hot seat, and Miami makes a claim to be the best team in the country. We'll talk about it all here on this episode of the Pigskin Cafe.
Welcome to the Pigskin Cafe. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
They have to win this game.
There's a problem. This one's tough.
We are back.
That's what my guts tell me.
I genuinely could not believe it.
You don't live in the great state of Texas.
All right, big boy. Hold my sweet tea.
Welcome back into the Pigskin Cafe. My name is Hampton Sipper, and I've got my good buddy back, Mr. Graham Haney, joining me to break down Week 6 of college football. We're going to talk about Alabama getting a huge win against Vandy at home, about Florida rebounding after a tough start, and a few other tidbits and takeaways from the entire college football landscape. But before we get into that, a few housekeeping reminders. If you haven't already, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. We're so close to 400 subscribers. We're inching our way up. Help us get over the hump, and we appreciate each and every one of you for listening and joining us along this journey during the college football season. Be sure to leave us a like on the video, leave us a comment, and hit that notification bell. Now, with all that out of the way, let's get right into Alabama getting a 30-14 victory over the Diego Pavia-led Vanderbilt Commodores in Tuscaloosa yesterday. And Graham, I'm going to start with you on this one, man. I want to hear your reaction to this game, and we're going to get into the specifics of kind of how the game unfolded before us. We're going to look at the offense. We're going to look at the defense, what they did well, and what they need to improve on. But full disclosure, everyone, I was at a wedding yesterday. Congrats to Rico, Uncle Suave over there for getting hitched. And so I watched the majority of this game on my phone, but because I love each and every one of you, and I was very excited to watch the game, I watched it when I got back last night. So, Graham, in real time, what did you make of Alabama getting revenge? And I can't believe I'm saying that Alabama had to get revenge on Vanderbilt, but what a time to be alive. What did you make of that game yesterday, man? What was your biggest takeaway?
Yeah, that's a great point. I definitely think that it was a roller coaster of emotions stretching back a year, obviously, from what Alabama was supposed to be under Kalen DeBoer's leadership. Really the culmination last year of the team's shortcomings was that Vanderbilt loss in Nashville, a game where Alabama lacked momentum, lacked discipline, and obviously lost because Vanderbilt was able to take advantage of those opportunities that Alabama gave to them. So obviously we come back to this past week in Tuscaloosa, Alabama at home, looking for revenge. College game days there. Everybody in the country is looking at Alabama versus Vanderbilt. And man, what a roller coaster of emotions it was for the first half. Alabama comes out. They get ball first. They drive somewhat of the field. Ty Simpson ends up throwing his first interception of the year, which is a big bummer, but it obviously was not the worst thing that could have happened because Vanderbilt caught it on the 6-yard line or something like that. So terrible that it's an interception, but it definitely could have been better than a punt because downing him at the 6 is forcing him to drive the entire field, but that's exactly what Vanderbilt did. Vanderbilt drives all the way down the field, gets to the 45-yard line and breaks off a big 65-yard run. Hampton, at that point, in my gut, I said, oh no.
Here we go again.
It's happening again. Yeah, it's happening again. It was like deja vu all over. We saw last year, Vanderbilt really was able to take advantage of mismatches in assignments, especially in the box, but also poor eye discipline, fitting gaps on the back end by Alabama's defense. And they break off that big 65-yard run, and I did not know if we were ready to handle Diego Pavia and these Vanderbilt Commodores. However, I think the storyline of the game, for those that watched it will agree, and those that did not, and look at the box score, the box score also tells the story in this. Alabama responded well to adversity. They were punched in the mouth. Vanderbilt drove down the field, and what did Alabama do? I mean, truly, they in a sense kind of shut the run down for the rest of the game. Not completely, but it really took a big hit off of Vanderbilt's offense, which we know that's what they want to do. They want to control the possessions, the time on the clock. They want to make it where you are gassed and that they have the ball so long that your offense gets cold. And, man, we saw some stretches of that. Vanderbilt comes back in the second quarter and kind of shows a little bit of trick stuff to take advantage of, a little bit of over aggressiveness in Alabama's defense, and ties the game up at 14 going into half. But Alabama responded very well to adversity on offense and defense, because after that first possession on offense, they weren't able to build substantial momentum, but that one interception was the one blemish on the night for Alabama. And then Vanderbilt, after we come back from halftime, really is a completely different team. We see that Alabama's able to shut down the run. And Hampton, I love the stat that I think you shared in our group message where Vanderbilt had 115 yards or something like that of rushing in the first quarter, and then 40 or 50 in the second quarter. And then after halftime, they had like 16 and then 0. So Alabama really responded well to adversity. I think that's the complete storyline of the game and gives you confidence that this Alabama team is not the same Alabama team as last year that went into Nashville and took a devastating loss to Vanderbilt. The last thing I'll say is, and I'll pass it back to you, is a crazy stat that they mentioned during the game, or maybe it was on the radio call, was that Vanderbilt has not been favored in an SEC game since 2018. That's incredible to me, especially with how dominant they are at times, especially you look back at last year and at least the beginning of this year. I know that this year they really haven't played anybody outside of South Carolina, but they sure did take it to them. I imagine that's going to change going forward. They're going to be favored in some of these matchups sometime this year. But Hampton, I know that you watched the game on your phone, that you went back and watched the game after Suave got hitched. Congratulations to Rico Suave. All the love we have from the Pigskin Cafe goes to you and your beloved. So, Hampton, I think that Alabama responding well to adversity was the storyline of the game. Is there anything else you can think of that's like a big takeaway for this before we break down offense and defense?
Graham, I think he hit the nail on the head, and we're on the same wavelength because that was my biggest takeaway, the biggest overarching takeaway from this game. And we said it against Georgia, and you really couldn't tell a whole lot versus Wisconsin and versus ULM because Alabama didn't face a ton of adversity in those games. But I think the mental toughness, the competitive drive, the competitive character on this team, it's apparent. After that Florida State loss where it wasn't apparent, and that game is getting to be more and more of a misnomer and more of a confounding result as we go along through the year. I've got a few, I think, reasons as to why that happened that I'm not going to get into here because we're going to savor this win and break down this win. But this game to me, like, I don't think Alabama played bad football in this game. I think offensively, which we're going to get into, thought they were actually really, really good offensively. I thought defensively, first quarter was an abject disaster, but then they buckled down, they tightened the screws, and they got it done. You mentioned that stat. Here was the stat, Graham. It was 113 yards in the first quarter rushing, 22 for the rest of the game, 0 rushing yards in the fourth quarter. That's a heck of a job by that staff, and that is a heck of a job by the personnel on that defense, because I think more than anything, I do think, and I want to shout out my guy Landon Beeman, he mentioned that he thinks the main adjustment that they made was we started slanting our defensive linemen to the weak side of their formation, and that really impacted how we defended their running game. But I think more than anything, guys just played better football. They just executed. Because even on the first touchdown run, like you mentioned, it was just a bad run fit. It was Deontay Lawson not feeling the run correctly, his eye discipline being out of whack, and you leave a crease open. The guy goes down, hits the hole and goes and bursts forth, and, he's off to the races. But to me, this game was not pretty. I thought they played hard. They didn't always play well, but they kept competing. They kept fighting, kind of like the 15-round analogy that we said last week and that Kalen DeBoer said in his press conference. You just keep punching, keep chopping wood, and eventually that tree will fall. And that's what happened in this game. That is what happened. You kept delivering body blow after body blow, and eventually you got Vanderbilt to fall, and you end the game with the ball, and you score a touchdown to ice it. And I think, to me, more than anything, that is what – there is so much schematic stuff and players who are playing really well right now that we're going to get into. But I'm with you, man. The makeup of this team, I think, is very clearly different than last year. And I want to say, I told this to my buddy Thomas, and I may be wrong. The exception may be USF last year. I think it may be. I believe this is only maybe the second time under Kalen DeBoer where his team has been down to an opponent and come back and won. And to me, that shows a stark difference in the mindset of this team, the mindset of this coaching staff, and you can just see the total demeanor change, even in Kalen DeBoer, the heightened level of focus, the heightened level of intensity, and the heightened level of accountability and discipline. 2 games in a row, Graham, where Alabama had less penalties and less penalty yards than the opponent. Again, we said after Florida State, you got to do what you got to do week to week. Take care of whatever's in front of you. They're passing these tests week in, week out, and they're doing it in a plethora of ways. And I think that is really, really important. Now, you got anything to say on that, Graham, or can we get into the offense?
No, let's keep going.
Okay, well, I'm gonna get in to the offensive side of the ball, and before I get into, Ty Simpson and his performance, Jam Miller, a few of the receivers and the offensive line that I want to highlight, I want to drill this down again, everyone, because I think this is so important. Even though I think everyone coming out of this game, the glaring red flag is that Alabama did not finish in the red zone. There were too many times where you drove the ball downfield and you didn't end it in the end zone, or, like on the second drive of the game, you missed a kick. Or on the first drive of the game, like you said, you had the 4th down conversion where Ty throws an interception, which, again, I don't know why we're not running the football there, but that's just me. But even with those issues, I think the biggest thing, and we said this last week, and we kind of said it throughout the year, the ability of this offense to have long, sustained, and efficient drives is so dadgum critical, not only for the longevity and the success of the offense, but also for giving your defense time to breathe, time to recuperate when you have a first quarter where you get knocked in the mouth and you kind of need to gather yourself and kind of get your bearings about you and go out there and play better football. Because, that first quarter was a disaster for Alabama defensively. And after the second drive where Alabama missed a field goal, which, again, they moved the ball, you're still taking time off the clock, you're staying on the field, you're wearing their defense out, and you're winning the time of possession. That third drive, they go down, they have a 7.5-minute drive that ends in a touchdown. And then on the final drive of the game, well, not the final drive of the game, the second to final drive of the game, where you kick the field goal to ice it, that's another 8.5-minute drive. That is so critical in games like this to be able to control the ball and play quote-unquote 4-minute offense, which has turned into 7 or 8-minute offense, because you're able to string together conversions on third down because you have a quarterback that is hyper efficient on third down and that is playing at an unreal level right now. I would say this is probably Ty Simpson's worst game in the past 3 weeks, and his worst game in the past 3 weeks was 23 of 31 for 340, 2 touchdowns and a pick. He is playing at an unreal level right now. Yes, he needs to throw the ball away a little, on a couple of plays where he's trying to make too much happen. Totally agree with you. There's some times where you're holding on to the ball a little bit too long. Hit your check down, live to fight another day. But man, he is playing really, really good football. Again, not only sustaining drives, but look at the 2-minute drive before the half. You get the ball with like a minute left, no timeouts. You march 80 yards. He's 5 of 5 for 80 yards, and it ends in the end zone with a touchdown to Jeremy Bernard. That's NFL level stuff, ladies and gentlemen. And that is the 4th game in a row where Ty Simpson has led a 2-minute drive to a touchdown before the half. 4 games in a row. That's just super critical. I mean, that is super critical, and he's playing at an unreal level, being accurate with the football. Again, like I mentioned last week, winning pre-snap, setting the protection, playing a game of chess with the defensive coordinator where Vanderbilt shows one look, Ty audibles the play, then they switch to another look, then Ty audibles again. Just getting his guys in the right spot. And, on the whole shot that he made to Jeremy Bernard, it's cover 2, moves the safety over and holds him so that he can drive the ball behind the sinking corner. And before that safety hits him, and he just throws an absolute seed. The throw he made to Ryan Williams on the first touchdown, the throw he made on the 3rd down conversion, Isaiah Horton, where he's playing a little backyard ball, his playmaking ability to be able to create out of structure in critical moments has just been super impressive. But more than anything, again, his play on the field has been phenomenal. His ball placement, his accuracy, and again, winning before the snap, like many of the greats in the history of this game have done, like a Drew Brees, like a Peyton Manning, like a Tom Brady, like I mentioned last week. His leadership is really shining through, because there were 2 examples I want to highlight. And then, Graham, I'm going to kick it to you because I want to hear your take on Ty Simpson's performance and what, the level that he's playing at right now. It was in the 3rd quarter, about 5:25 to go. He throws a 3rd down strike to Jeremy Bernard across the middle. The camera catches a moment where he looks to the sideline after that. He hits his chest and says, "Give me the ball." If that doesn't give you goosies right there, ladies and gents, I don't know what will. That's what I want from my quarterback. He's gaining confidence week by week. It's becoming more and more of his team week by week. And another thing that I want to highlight is that when Ryan Williams dropped yet another football, and again, I don't want to bash on Ryan. I thought Ryan played a really good game yesterday. Probably his best overall of the season. I think even better than Wisconsin, to be honest with you. They show a shot of him going to the sideline, Ty, going over to him, looking him in his face, grabbing his helmet, talking him up and saying, "I'm going to have to go back to you. I count on you. I depend on you. And I trust you. I'm going to come back to you. Shake it off. Move on." That is what I love to see from my quarterback. And the last thing, I said this was the last thing, but one more thing, Graham, that I want to mention. 3rd and forever now, 3rd and 10, 3rd and 12. The punt unit isn't automatically out on the field anymore. Kalen DeBoer and Ryan Grubb have full trust and confidence that Ty Simpson is going to be able to convert those downs, especially if he has protection. And I think that coaching staff has empowered him, and part of it is because of his play on the field, to be really aggressive. And I think this offense is continuing to grow by leaps and bounds. And it's 5 games in, and I was high on Ty Simpson, but he's playing even better than I thought. Graham, what do you make of his performance again on Saturday? I mean, 340, 2 touchdowns. Just what do you make of it all, man?
Yeah, I look at the stats, watch the game, listen to it on the radio some, and the word that keeps coming to my head is still efficiency. That is what Ty Simpson is doing very well, is that he's being efficient with the ball. Yeah, he had a few more mental errors in this game than he has in the past few games. I think he definitely peaked against Georgia, really was very efficient, played really well against Wisconsin. But we saw those lapses in judgment not hurt us too bad. We have the interception. We have the times where he needs to throw it away, which we saw more of this game. But what you saw, the difference from last year, is that those didn't kill the drive. Those didn't kill Alabama's momentum on offense. It was an interception in the fourth quarter, like we said, on fourth down. But like I said, you had him pinned down at the 6. So it not great, but not the end of the world. You have moments where he's got to be faster thinking with his feet, getting rid of the ball, getting out of the pocket, and just being done with the play. But I think that you've seen Ty Simpson be efficient and continue to make accurate throws across the middle of the field, which is what Alabama struggled to do last year. My biggest takeaway from the offensive side of the ball, just moving on from Ty Simpson, I think you did a good job covering him, was the area a few weeks ago when I asked the question, the area in the room that needed to step up and had not been producing at the level that they needed to was the running back room.
Mm-hmm.
Hampton, I'm sure you remember it. Listeners, I'm sure you remember it too. And on this day, after Alabama takes down Vanderbilt in revenge, TG, FJ, thank God for Jan Miller. I mean, he is...
I love it, Graham. Let's go, baby.
You can tell that this was the piece that Alabama was missing over the first few weeks. And you see last week and this week against Georgia and Vanderbilt, Jan Miller has taken over that room and has been dependable and is running the ball with physicality that our running backs lacked prior to him getting there. You look at the few weeks before, Kevin Riley did a good job stepping in his absence, but Jan Miller is that one punch. And Kevin Riley can come in that second punch, but you got to have that first punch before that second one can be effective. And Jan Miller was good all night. 22 rushes for 136 yards and a touchdown. Man, you watched them hand the ball off to Jam, and it was 5 yards, 6 yards, 10 yards, 5 yards, 6 yards, 10 yards. And Jan Miller really helping this offense become less dependent on the pass, which we know is their strong suit. And really, as you can see in the second half, really wore out Vanderbilt's defense in the end. And his rushing touchdown came with, seconds left in the game to ice the game and to really, for all the sports bettors out there, seal the cover for Alabama. But Jan Miller has been, he's a physical back and really a piece that Alabama didn't know they missed until he came back and his presence was shown. So I'll end with this. TG, FJ. Thank God for Jan Miller.
Graham, I think we need to make a Pigskin Cafe shirt with that acronym. That is absolutely fantastic. I love that. And I'll get to Jam in just a minute because I gave Chase and Andy a little grief last week because they hate on Jam for some reason. I think he's so unspectacular. I think he's a pivotal part of this football team. But I want to hit on something else that you said because, we talked about with Ty, that he held on the ball too long a little bit and put Alabama in negative situations. What I loved after the game, the guy comes up to the podium. He has a great game by almost any other metric, almost any other quarterback in the country. That would be a career day for them, especially this year with the quarterback play that we've seen. He goes up there and says, I took 4 sacks today and I put us in negative positions, and that's unacceptable. My guys blocked too dang good, and my wide receivers worked too hard to get open, and that's unacceptable for me to take 4 sacks. I got to throw the ball away. That type of and it's so authentic. It's so genuine. I think that infiltrates that football team when it's coming from your head guy. And I absolutely love that response from him. And I think that it was so important. And also, he's just doing such a good job of going through his progressions, working the whole field. You talked about the middle of the field. Kalen DeBoer apparently told the broadcast he is the best quarterback he's ever had at throwing over the middle of the field, which Alabama didn't go over the middle of the field the past few years. Again, not taking shots, just being honest. But I do want to mention the overall game plan and Ryan Grubb, because I think, Alabama's got to finish drives better. There's no doubt about that. We said that in the second half of Georgia, and we said it in this game too. And I think some of it was due to a lack of execution. Again, Ty taking a sack, a missed block here, a missed assignment there. But Graham, some of it was just bad play calling, man. Like on 3rd and 5, why are we taking the ball out of our quarterback's hand and running like a wildcat power with Jeremy Bernard? I love Jeremy. I don't have any kids, but I would trust Jeremy to babysit my kids. Like, I trust that dude. He's a dependable football player. But I'm not putting him in that situation. There were a couple play calls like that where I feel like Grubb at times can get a little too cute for his own good, and I think he can overcomplicate things. For example, to transition to Jam, which you talked about. Jam had 8 carries for 70 yards in the first quarter alone. Okay? He ended up with 22. That means he only had 14 the rest of the game. In the second quarter, he only had 2 carries. There were lapses in times during the game where I think he got away from the run too much and became a little too pass happy instead of having that nice mix, which I thought he really had during the Georgia game. I thought he did a very effective job of keeping the defense on its heels and keeping them off balance with mixing up the run and the pass. And again, those are nitpicks, and I think sometimes in the flow of the game that can happen. But I think some of the issues in the red zone can be fixed if you just hand the ball to 2-6, because like you said, thank God for Jam Miller. Jam Miller was awesome yesterday, not only as a runner, and you could tell that he was much more comfortable yesterday after kind of getting his feet wet against Georgia. I think part of that had to do with the offensive line's performance and Vanderbilt not being as stout up front. And I do want to say Vanderbilt's a dang good football team, everyone. They have Vanderbilt on their helmet, but that is a top 25 team. If they had AU on their helmet, I think a lot of people would be singing the praises of this win even more, because I think they are a really good team. It's not just Pavia. Clark Lee, strong jaw means good coach. Shout out Taylor McCullough. He has done an effective job there in Nashville and really building that program, and they got a bunch of experienced guys, and I think they were doing a lot even defensively, changing up looks pre to post snap multiple times, being really aggressive and trying to kind of confuse Alabama, especially in the run game. And I think sometimes when you get down to those red zone areas, you need to just run the ball and give the ball to Jam, let him be physical, and let him, kind of put his foot in the ground and go. I think he did a really effective job of that yesterday. I thought Kevin Riley played a really good game. He had limited opportunities, but I thought he ran hard, except for there was one play, I believe was in the first quarter, where they kind of gave it to him on the outside zone. He had a cutback opportunity that he didn't take. I think he'll see that in the film room and kind of take that in the future. But I think another thing about Jam that I want to say real quickly, and then we'll transition to the receivers and the offensive line, and I want to get your thoughts on that, Graham. As great as Jam was as a runner, and I loved them icing the game at the end with the toss left, which I called that play. I knew what it was going to be when they lined up in that formation. He's such an elite pass protector. And for a quarterback to have that level of trust in your running back to pick up a blitz or pick up an unblocked defender like that, I think it's paramount for this offense. And I think he just adds an overall physicality and toughness to this unit that they were missing without him. But Graham, respond to that if you want to. You can kind of hit off that if you like. But what did you think of the performances by the wide receivers yesterday? And what did you think of the O-line? Do you think they took another step in the right direction with rushing for over 100 yards for the second game in a row?
Yeah, I mean, you look at it, and Jam would not have been anywhere successful without the offensive line playing well. And like I said, we had more head-scratching moments against Vanderbilt than we did against Georgia. But overall, the unit is improving and showing that we can trust their to trust them in big moments, and they're reliable in a sense similar to Jeremy Bernard with Hampton's future children. I think you look at the offensive line and you look at the receivers, running backs, and what Ty said is that the expectation is not just to be okay and not to just celebrate the moments we do good, but even in the times where we win, we still got to be better. And there are times when we look back and say we've got to make better decisions. The offensive line blocked too well. The receivers got open too well. They worked too hard for Ty Simpson to take sacks. And so I think that last year, you look at Alabama's offensive line received a lot of negative attention, and honestly, probably rightfully so. But part of it was who was receiving the ball from center. What are they making with their plays, and what are they doing with those moments? And so I think that Ty coming out and saying that, like you said, Hampton, really puts the emphasis on it. Ty's got to be the one that makes the best decision. He's got to make the right decision with the ball in the right time, and the offensive line's got to give him an opportunity to do that. They can't just let free runners come through. I will say that Vanderbilt did a better job of getting after Ty Simpson than Georgia did, which is honestly a big shocker to myself and I imagine to most of our listeners, because Hampton, like you said, this Vanderbilt team is they wear the script V, so it's a little bit different. It's Vanderbilt; they're not supposed to be that good, but that's a scrappy football team, and they play disciplined and they play hard. And you see that over the course of the game, they did that in the fourth quarter. That's when they started falling apart, and Alabama was able to take advantage of that with undisciplined plays by Vanderbilt. Going to the wide receiver room, I mean, it just is another effort, an emphasis on Ty Simpson being efficient, spreading the ball out, throwing to who's open. It's not a one-man show or an outside deep run play whenever we need something big to happen. It's crossers of the middle. It is deep ball. It is deep balls outside, but I think my favorite throw that Ty had all game was like third and 11, third and 12. Mm-hmm. And he throws an outside ball to Isaiah Horton. He goes up at high points that catches in the first quarter. And gets about 20 yards on the play. So it might be more than that. But with Ryan Williams, Jeremy Bernard, Isaiah Horton, that's a good mix up of receivers. You got all body types, speed, finesse, height, physical. And you just have a wide receiver room that's not built on one thing, which I think is going to prove to be an asset for Alabama going forward. But the receivers and Ryan Williams had some drops throughout the game, but in the moments that mattered most, they secured the catch. Mm-hmm. Ryan Williams responds, catches that touchdown, a big play by him. And it's nice to see that Alabama's able to drive the field, but also able to take big shots when they're open, which is not. Again, I hate to keep bringing up last year, but last year it was kind of home run or bust. It was kind of boom or bust every play. And mm-hmm. with Ty Simpson, this Alabama offense, we're able to sustain drives, convert third downs, make it third and even manageable, and keep living to fight another day, which is a great thing to have. And it makes it where it's not only easy to watch, but it's fun to watch because you know that Alabama stands a chance against anybody in any situation. And you just look and see the progression. This Alabama offense has just gotten better every week. Every week they've gotten better, been more efficient, figured out better ways to find the open man the ball, and really have responded well to everything that they faced outside of Florida State in week one. Mm-hmm. So kudos to Alabama's offense. A good effort, good performance. And, got a tough schedule going forward, but Alabama's offense got to keep pushing the pace, got to keep pushing the tempo, got to still be efficient to make sure we take care of the wins and take care of the games that we need to going forward.
Yeah, I totally agree, Graham. And I want to quickly say, because I know people get, I think, aggravated. Like I posted a clip about, again, I'm not bashing a previous team or previous player. I think it's important to highlight the differences that we are seeing on offense from last year to this year, because not only is it, frankly, it's just very apparent, but it also shows that we were right. All the issues that we highlighted last year, were. I mean, they've kind of gone away, and I'm not going to say exactly why they go away, but you can put two and two together and know why they went away and why things that Alabama struggled with for the past few years are now strengths of the offense. And now you're seeing the full gamut, the full run of the Kalen DeBoer offense. It's not being ugly, it's not mudslinging or anything like that. It's just football. It's facts. We can't run from it. We can't hide from it. Destiny arrives. Shout out Thanos. That's just the fact of the matter, everyone. So I thought that was a great point by you. And transitioning to the receivers really quickly, I agree. I think the point that you made about each guy being a little different and giving a little bit of a different blend and skill set to that room is immensely valuable. I love how Horton is becoming more and more of a focal point of the offense, really. I love how Lotsier Brooks makes one or two plays a game where you're like, yeah, this dude down the stretch especially, I kind of want to see more design plays to get the ball in his hands and get him in space a little bit more than we actually have, because I think he's had electric. Yeah, go ahead, Graham.
Yeah, well, and every time that Lotsier Brooks makes a play, it's a big play in the game. It's not just hey, we're throwing a screen to just kind of give him the ball. It's a third down conversion or a 25, 30-yard play. So whenever he does get the ball, it's a big play in the game and really shifts the momentum.
No, 100%. I think that's a great point. And for him to be a freshman and to come in when he did, and again, he jumped a bunch of upperclassmen. There are a bunch of upperclassmen that he jumped, and to get playing time, I think that just shows, I think, not only the type of player he is, but the type of kid he is. Because you got to be extremely detail focused, detail oriented, do the little things right, which that is why he's getting the playing time. Kalen DeBoer has talked about it in his press conferences, and I think his role is going to be expanded more and more as we go throughout the year. I also want to highlight, he didn't make a catch, but I thought it was interesting, Graham, upon rewatch. Derek Meadows actually got a good bit of snaps in this game. Another freshman receiver. So I thought that was interesting, that they must have seen something that they liked in practice, the way that he's been putting his head down and working, to give him some opportunities. And I remember seeing some tweets or seeing some, examples on Twitter about how he did really well in run blocking. So kudos to him for getting an opportunity. Quickly on the offensive line, before we transition to the defense, I thought they played well. I don't think they played quite as well as they did versus Georgia, especially in pass protection, because while I do agree that Ty did hold on to the ball sometimes too long, no doubt about it, that play action pass on 1st and 10 down in the red area being the prime example, there were some times where Vanderbilt did a lot of twists and stunts up front, some games that Alabama didn't pick up properly. And I can think of, I believe, one on the second drive where Geno Vandermark got just beat across his face. Ty threw it and had Lotsier Brooks open, but he got a pretty good lick, and he overthrew him. So that was an example. There was an example where Ty got sacked, where Wilkin Formby was playing guard. Guy got across his face on a stunt, got pressure on the quarterback. And there were a few instances of that where I think they got to clean up. Run blocking, that's the best job that they've done run blocking all year. I do think part of that is probably Vandy's personnel to an extent, but I also think there is improvement on that front, because they didn't run the ball super efficiently against Georgia, but when it mattered most, they were able to. On those final two possessions of the game, or series of the game on the final drive, they were able to get the job done. The last thing I want to say on the offensive line, I find it very interesting that it's looking more and more like Michael Carroll is about to win that right tackle position. He played 41 snaps on Saturday, which was up from, I believe, 20-something from the previous Saturday against Georgia. They're trusting him more and more. And I think it's inevitable at this point, because the guy gives you an upside and a physicality and a nastiness that Wilkin Formby simply doesn't at that position. I think he's athletically limited too, especially dealing with speed on the edge. And I think Michael Carroll's definitely going to have growing pains, but I think you can live with that, with the upside that he gives you. They played Wilkin at right guard. There were a few plays where he did, like I said, he gave up initial pressure. But there were some plays where I thought in run blocking especially, he did a good job of sealing his man off, getting some movement and getting some creases available for Jam or Kevin Riley to run through. And then they were also switching Will Sanders and Cam Dewberry out at left guard. So they're still unsettled a little bit on the offensive line, but I think that unit is heading in the right direction. And you got to give credit to all those players and Coach Cap for really riding the ship after what was, I think, you and I both agree, and probably every Alabama fan does, a pretty bad performance against Florida State. So let's close the chapter on the offense. I think we covered that thoroughly, even though I could wax poetically about Ty Simpson and his performance for another hour. But let's transition to the defense, Graham. And I'm going to kind of set you up with this. Diego Pavia absolutely barbecued Alabama last year. He was excellent. They were 12 of 18 on third down last year. They had 42 minutes of time possessed. I mean, they took it to Alabama. They were more physical than them up front. Even though Alabama later in the game kind of adjusted to the run in 2024, they made critical play after critical play. And Pavia comes in this year talking more junk than ever. And honestly, I'm all for having confidence as a player. There's a fine line between confidence and being a jerk, and I think he turned into a jerk this past week. And I'm being polite. I'm being very politically correct. There's some other words that I can think of other than jerk. But talking about if we play our game, it won't be close. Being a little grotesque, I guess, before the game with some of the hand gestures and such that he was displaying to the crowd. Practicing a knee before the game because that's what he thought was going to happen at the end. He got off to a hot start, but then that Alabama defense really fastened in, buckled up, and shut him down for the rest of the game. What did you make of that performance? And were there any players in particular that you thought flashed and played a really, really good ball game on Saturday?
Yeah, I will say that first drive that Alabama had on defense was definitely poor. Like we said, I thought the same thing was going to happen again, that we were going to face this just a same thing, different day. And Alabama's defense responded well to it. I think Justin Jefferson definitely led those efforts. With the 4-2-5 system, linebackers have to be the most disciplined and fill those gaps correctly. And the first drive we lacked doing that some. But as we watch after that first drive, Alabama really starts to figure it out, and Justin Jefferson, I think, is the guy that really just starts making plays, and that's just from the box score. But you think of what Vanderbilt does really well is it's a offensive control. They want to run the ball and then set up things based off of the run, and they want to fool you with eye candy to get you to do one thing and they do another. But I think the difference in the game from last year and this year was that Alabama's defense last year was gassed by the end of the game. They were so tired because Vanderbilt controlled controlled possession, controlled time of clock, controlled the atmosphere and the momentum of the game. That the defense was the only one that the defense last year was on their heels the entire game for reasons that we want to just keep saying. But this year, that the script was flipped. The first quarter, Vanderbilt has the majority of the time of possession, but at the end of the game, Alabama actually held the ball for about 15 minutes more of game clock than Vanderbilt did. And I think that's the definition of changing from last year to this year. Just Alabama, it does help on offense, but defense able to get off the field on third down was impressive. Vandy still 5 for 11 on third down, but really those 5 that Vanderbilt was able to convert were not third and forever. All 5 of those. A few of them were longer than they should have been, and some of them came on that last drive. But Alabama really forcing Vanderbilt to, okay, if you're going to beat us, you're going to have to drive the field, and you're not going to have just one big play after another. We limited the big plays, and I think that's the testament to the defense, just making good adjustments and keeping their eyes disciplined. for what this Vanderbilt team was willing to show this week. So I keep it short and sweet and hopefully fairly simple.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, Graham. And I want to, before I kind of get into the Alabama perspective on it, I do want to give a ton of credit to that Vandy offense. They are tough to deal with. That all that motion, all the eye candy, all the misdirection. It's tough for a defense to prepare for, and it's tough for a defense to play against, especially when a player as effective as Diego Pavia is running it. And he's kind of the point guard. He's the air traffic controller, kind of dictating everything. And they got some real, playmakers. Cedric Alexander is a good back. Eli Stowers is a really good tight end, really effective tight end. That Cheryl guy out wide, the wide receiver number 0, he's a really effective player. So they got a lot of talent on offense, and I think Alabama early in the game, they were kind of playing on their heels. You talked about bad eye discipline, bad gap integrity, which that's kind of been a theme. The past 2 years a little bit with this Kane Womack defense, not setting the edge as well as they should. Those few things creeped up in that first half. But for the rest of the game, you had had the first big run on the first drive. Diego Pavia had a 34 to 40-yard run on the second drive. Other than that, it was tough sledding. And I think a lot of it had to do with just guys playing better. I know sometimes we want to make it more complex than it actually is, in that, Kane Womack went in there and completely threw away the game plan and said, all right, this is what we're going to do now. I'm sure there were some adjustments made. No doubt about it. Like I mentioned that one earlier with slanting your D lineman to the weak side. I think that definitely probably helped. I think more than anything, the guys just played better. They settled in. They played with more physicality, with more intensity, and they dictated the terms to the Vanderbilt offense instead of playing on their heels. And I think that was the biggest difference in the game. It also helps when James Smith comes back in the second half and is able to play along that D line. And, because in the first half, I think he was sorely missed. Alabama's kind of thin on that D line already with, Jeremiah Beeman, who was a starter coming into the year with Tim Keenan being out. So you take another guy off, and arguably James Smith is your best defensive lineman. You're kind of, that's not an opportune time for him to be out against an offense like this. And I do think there are 2 or 3 observations that I kind of want to take away. And I heard this on another podcast, but I noticed it myself on rewatch. So I'll give credit to Locked on Bama because I did hear it there, and I heard it on, Clint Lamb's show. But Alabama this year is doing a lot more with matching personnel and playing different personnel groupings than they did last year. And what I mean by that is, last year a lot of it was pretty much they were playing their base. They were playing 3 down linemen, and then they played a wolf. And that wolf would be either outside the tackle or he'd be, hovering over the A-gap. This year, there's a lot more, 3 down linemen, 2 wolves on the field. 3 down linemen and an extra bandit or 2, to match heavier personnel packages on the offense. And I think that has been effective for Alabama, especially against a team like Georgia, where, we complained last week about how Georgia continued to get to the edge, but they really didn't have a lot of success up the middle. And I think a lot of that had to do with Alabama playing an extra lineman and kind of matching that personnel. And I think they did a little bit more of that versus Vandy as the game went on. I want to highlight a few players that I thought played really good games. You already mentioned one. Justin Jefferson, golf clap for you, young man. 14 tackles. He was all over the place, had a huge forced fumble on 3rd down when Vanderbilt was in the red zone. It was an incredible play by him to chase it down from behind, rip the ball out. Tim Keenan jumps on top. And another play that really stood out to me from Jefferson was late in the game. Diego was rolling to his left, and you just see a crimson blur coming, number 10, flying to him and getting a sack. That looked to me like Rashaan Evans from back in the day, man. That is exactly what that reminded me of. Thought he played a really effective game. Thought Deontay Lawson was all right. Again, there were a couple times he can get kind of manipulated with a lot of that eye candy on that third down. I think it was on the third down where Keon Sabb got the interception, which I'm going to talk about Keon here in a minute. The tight end kind of leaked out. All right, Justin Hill takes the tight end that goes to the flat, and I would think that would be his responsibility. It's easier for him to do that than for him to chase the tight end. But Deontay takes the guy in the flat, and then no one accounts for the tight end over the top. So there were a few things like that that got better as the game went along, but I think still have to be improved upon, especially with Missouri that you're going to be playing this week. But I thought Dijon Lee did a lot of good things in this game, played really physical, was really good in pass coverage, had a great breakup along the goal line. Diego Pavia kind of threw a back shoulder to Sherrill, and, Dijon was in phase, played really well, got a hand in there, thought he was really good in run support. And Keon Sabb, I thought, played a great game. He, got the pick at the end of the game, got him a sack, was kind of all over the field. Kelby Collins, that was the best game that he's played in Alabama uniform by far. Pressured the passer effectively, thought he did much better in run support. So overall, that unit, more than anything, to hold that offense to 14 points and 0 in the second half, I thought was just super impressive. They continue to play a lot of guys on that side of the ball. Late in the game, I think Keon Sabb got hurt. They put Dre Kirkpatrick in there. They put Zay Mincy in there, who he had a really good game. PFF is PFF, but he had the highest grade defensively out of any defensive player. I thought he played well. Got him a pick that got called back, which they never showed the holding call for it, so I don't know if it was a hold or not. Xavier Brown almost had a pick. Yanze Pierre, I got to mention him. Yanze Pierre, I thought, played his best game in a Crimson Tide uniform. The 3rd and 1 stop that they had on the second drive of the second half, really impressive from him. He stayed home, and made Diego kind of indecisive with his read, stayed outside, and then Damani came and cleaned it up. He played really well on a kind of, they were going to throw like a throwback screen across the field. Motion went to the right. They were going to throw back left. Yanze stayed home. I think he's getting better and better, and he was really close at the end to getting some pass rush wins and getting some sacks. Overall, really impressed by that unit. Really impressed with the resolve. Really impressed with the physicality and just how they bounced back from adversity, Graham. You got anything else to add to that? I know that was a lot, but there was just a lot of guys that I wanted to highlight because I thought they did a great job, man.
Yeah, if there's somebody that Alabama's defense that Hampton did not mention, we now give you credit for what you did yesterday against Vanderbilt. That way we're all inclusive and make sure that everybody gets equal access to the Pigskin Cafe and what Hampton Sipper has to say.
Well, George Bush did sign the No Child Left Behind Act. I'm the No Alabama football player left behind, I guess. I don't want to leave anybody out. But Graham, let's close the lid on this Alabama Vanderbilt game. Great win, way to get your revenge, and for your reward, you get to play an undefeated Missouri team coming off a bye, who is really good at running the football and really good at stopping the run. I think that's going to be a very tough game for Alabama. I'm excited to see how they respond. 11 o'clock kick. Let's see if they can go into Como and get a big win. Graham, before we get out of here, man, there were some other games that happened across the country. What was your biggest takeaway from the rest of the action across college football in week 6?
Yeah, I got to mention the Comedy Central of college football. The UCLA Bruins getting a big win at home, their first one of the season.
Come on.
Man, I don't know what – first off, I don't know what's wrong with James Franklin at Penn State, but every year they have a game that's like this where they lose to somebody that just – it doesn't make any sense. UCLA's 0-4, got throttled by Utah, lost to UNLV, got throttled by the University of New Mexico, and then lost to Northwestern with like 15 fans in the stands. 0-4, play against Penn State at home and get a massive win. UCLA had 52 rushing attempts. They ran the ball 52 times on Penn State. Nico Iamaleava had a great game with his legs. And, man, it was the Super Bowl in the Rose Bowl for the UCLA Bruins. And, man, Penn State, I don't know what you do going forward. I think that I don't know what you do going forward. You play really competitive with Oregon, who's arguably the best team in the country, if not one of the best. Super close. And then you lose to one of the worst teams in the country on the road. I mean, I can't even believe it. I'm sure that most of our listeners didn't watch the game because, like I said, it was probably on Comedy Central because that's the only place where UCLA can get decent views this year. But, man, Drew Aller and Penn State, what are we doing? Big win by UCLA, though. Got to give them credit. Got to give credit where credit's due. But, man, I don't even know what to say. Just totally embarrassing. And Penn State got to respond big time for questions not to be asked about James Franklin. I don't know what you say to your players after the game, to your fans after the game. Losing on the road to, I mean, arguably one of the worst Power 5 teams in the country in UCLA.
You know what I say, Graham? Get them out of the playoff conversation. I'm done with them. They're written off because, yeah, they went to overtime against Oregon, but Oregon really controlled the majority of that game. I don't think.
I saw it.
Go ahead.
I saw a crazy stat where they just pretty much showed time of leading in games, and UCLA had not led in any part of any of their 4 games this year until they played Penn State. It was 136 minutes or something like that, or an hour and 36 minutes or something, where Penn State had been leading before week 4, before week 5, and UCLA had 0 minutes leading with a lead. And then during the game, UCLA led the entire game. I mean, just awful. Just a terrible game. Terrible game.
Yeah. There's really no coming back from that. I mean, I think they got Ohio State, later in the year. Let's be honest with ourselves, people. They're not winning that game. I mean, we know what James Franklin is at this point. He's 4-21 in top 10 matchups or against AP top 10 teams. His team, usually they win the ones they're supposed to win. They lose the ones that they're supposed to lose. I mean, to me, this is the worst loss of the year by any top team. And again, Drew Aller, I think, had a pretty good game overall statistically. I can't speak to how he played because I have not watched that tape because, like Graham said, it was on Comedy Central or Cozy TV, one of the two. So just a debacle. And I'm telling you right now, I think this might be the year where Penn State says we've had enough of James Franklin. They move on, especially if you lose another game to Ohio State and you don't get in the playoff with this team, with all the guys that you had coming back. I mean, I don't know, man. I don't know, Chief. It is not going to be good. But let me give 2 takeaways real quick, Graham. I like that one a ton because I think it was the biggest shock of the weekend from anybody. My 2 takeaways: Miami is probably the best team in the country right now. Defensively, they're playing lights out, and offensively, they are so good at the offensive line position, and they're able to play their brand of ball against anybody, and it travels. And I think that, in any level of football, I think that's just important. Carson Beck is doing just enough. They got Malachi Toney, who's an absolute dog, as a weapon outside for them. I think they're probably the best team I've seen so far this year. And the good news for them, they don't really have any tests left on that schedule. They are going to cruise in the college football playoff, probably unscathed. And I don't foresee them taking a loss unless it's just completely unexpected and somebody gets hot on a certain Saturday, which can happen because that is what makes college football all the more fun. But the other takeaway that I wanted to highlight is, Graham, I told you pre-show, it was a good day for our preseason preview pod We talked about Alabama. We were really high on Alabama coming into the year. I was high on Ty Simpson coming into the year. That all came to fruition on Saturday, and that's been coming to fruition the past few weeks. But, Graham, you had a take and I had a take. Your take was that one of the most overrated teams coming into the year were the Longhorns of Texas. And boy, oh boy, were you right. They went down to Gainesville, a struggling Florida team coming off a bye. They were 1-3, and Florida pretty much controlled that whole game. And I got to give myself a pat on the back. Austin Porter is my witness. Josh is my witness. I believe I put it in our group meet. I knew Florida was going to win this game. I was very confident because I felt like their defense has been outstanding all year. That is not why they have been losing ball games. Their offense has just been an abject disaster. But what did they do? Billy Napier said, I'm on the hot seat again. It's time to coach like Nick Saban. He called a really good game. They gave Jaden Ball the football 27 times. They stayed committed to the running game. And DJ Lagway looked a little bit more like DJ Lagway from last year. I thought he looked a ton better. He still had a bad pick, but I thought he looked really good. Their defense completely – Arch Manning was rough. It was another rough performance from him. Their offensive line is a mess, which both you and I talked about before the season. But to go back to my preseason prediction, one of my breakout players for the year was Dallas Wilson. Florida, true freshman receiver. He made his debut in this game. 2 tuds, and his second touchdown was one of the more impressive individual efforts I've seen all year. I mean, he went off the line of scrimmage, threw off one guy, ran over another guy, and they still couldn't get him to the ground. He drug Michael Taft, an all-SEC safety, into the end zone, and I think he adds another dynamic to that game. And I'm telling you right now, everyone knows I love Billy Napier, and I know he may lose his job, but I think that team clearly loves and clearly plays for that guy. Down the stretch, especially with Dallas, if he can emerge as a true number one go-to option for DJ, there's nobody that's going to want to play that Florida team with the defense that they have and the way that they're able to run the ball if they stay committed to it. So, impressive win by Florida, but I think Texas isn't done losing. I think there are some core fundamental issues with that team, and it starts up front with that O-line, and it starts with that quarterback who, frankly, is kind of a mess right now. So, Graham, you got any reaction to that, man, before we kind of get on out of here, or any other takeaways that you want to highlight?
Yeah, I think everybody kind of knew that this was going to be a tough game for Texas because of how good Florida's defense was, and arguably the best defense that Texas has played all year. It's also tough going down to Gainesville to play, especially when Billy Napier's on the brink of getting fired, which happened almost last year. I swear that Florida plays different whenever they've already written the check to Billy Napier. He just hasn't cashed it yet.
Yeah.
I swear, like, Florida just plays different. Like, they've already cut the check. They've already agreed to the terms. It's like, we just got to wait and sign this. We'll wait until the game's over, and then we'll sign the check. And then what does Billy Napier do? The team comes out and plays hard, and they win. Just a big win by Florida. And who knows, maybe this gets Florida going in the right direction. A big win at home and kind of changes the trajectory of their season. But it definitely changed the trajectory of Texas' season. We talked about it on the pre-show, so I'm not going to harp on it too much. But Arch Manning is so overrated. I'm not saying that he's a bad quarterback. He's just not as good as they want him to be. Like, the media out there want Arch Manning to be Peyton and Eli and every Manning that ever existed. Their best elements are with Arch Manning, and that's just not the case. That's not the case. He's slow processing. We've talked about his inconsistency throwing the ball.
His mechanics.
And then I love
Graham. Oh my God,
man! I just love that after every time that he plays poorly, the videos come up on social media of the teams that Arch Manning played in high school. I mean, truly, like the JV squad, if there ever was one. I don't even know why you would waste your time playing in games like that. And surely those are probably just the worst moments. But when you play games like that against teams like that in high school, you're not developing for college when you're playing these really good defenses like Ohio State and like Florida going forward. So maybe Texas figures it out, but they have no margin for error left on their schedule if they want to make it to the college football playoff.
Totally agree with you, Graham. And I'll say, you talked about Billy Napier. He's like Jordan Belfort or Leonardo DiCaprio in The Wolf of Wall Street. He ain't freaking leaving. You're going to have to bring the SWAT, the FBI, and every law enforcement agency to take him out of Gainesville right now, man.
Yeah.
Like, it's unfreaking believable. I secretly love it because, again, I think Billy goes about it the right way. He's a good dude, and I want success for him. And again, I think it is a testament to him that team has not quit on him. They haven't thrown in the towel. They didn't last year. And, he talked about after the game in the post-game speech, he said, all those people that were talking bad about you, they're going to talk good about you now. But we got to keep it internal, and it doesn't get easier for them. They play A&M in A&M next week in College Station, who is coming off a pretty impressive win against Mississippi State. They're undefeated. I could see Florida going in there and getting a win, especially if they're committed to run the ball, because Mississippi State ran the ball pretty effectively against A&M, if I'm not mistaken. But I don't know. I think it's great that the resilience that they showed, and hopefully this gets them on the right track. But man, Graham, we've got that game. We've got Alabama, Missouri. We've got Indiana and Oregon. We've got the Red River Shootout. I mean, are you kidding me, baby? We're eating good this weekend in college football, and I can't wait to cover it all with you when we gather together again to break it all down. Before we head out, anything else? Or are we ready to wrap it on up, big dog?
I think we've already had our main course and time for seconds. It's time to close out the show.
Time to close out the show and head home for dessert, everyone. Well, thank you so much for listening to this edition of the Pigskin Cafe. Not cafe. We're not in French or Italy. What, Graham?
Cafe.
Oh, cafe. Yeah, cafe. Thank you for listening to this edition of the Pigskin Cafe. If you made it this far and you are not subscribed, what are you doing? I mean, come on. Go ahead, hit that subscribe button, leave us a like on the video, leave us a comment on what your biggest takeaway was from Week 6 of college football. What'd you make of Alabama defeating Vanderbilt? And be sure to follow us on social media and be on the lookout for new videos from us during the week. And we can't wait to break it all down next week. Alabama, Missouri, like I said, Red River Shootout. Ton of good games that we're going to be able to break down. But the Pigskin Cafe is going to be closed for now. But until next time, chew on that.